Hi, my name's Deanna Clark with the Clark-Esposito law firm, and with me today is Janet Himmelreich with 3Comply, and we're going to be talking about false claims and cybersecurity. Welcome, Janet.
Hi, Deanna. Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's a great topic, isn't it?
It sure is. Let's dive right in. So, what is this all about anyway? False Claims Act, and cybersecurity.
So, False Claims Act, as some of you may know, or also known as FCA, has been around a really long time. It's a Civil War era law. And as a result, it's being applied in many different ways than it originally was back in the 1860s. So I don't think they knew about cybersecurity back then. So today, it is being applied in cybersecurity because the fundamental aspect of the False Claims Act is it's wonderful to work with the government. Just make sure you only bill them for what you should bill them, and they only pay you as per your contract. And that's how it's being applied today in cybersecurity because there are rules that are in every contract, and people are probably not reporting quite properly about that. So it's a tool that they are now using. And when I say they, I mean the Department of Justice.
Oh, okay. So now we've got everyone's attention, right? Because nobody wants DOJ coming around. I thought that this had to do with healthcare primarily. Can you explain?
Yeah, that's a good question. It is something that has been being used in healthcare for many years, well over 20 years now. On average, the Department of Justice has collected something in the order of $5 billion a year. That's a year, not total. $5 billion a year for Medicare fraud. It's primarily a situation where a healthcare organization has incorrectly billed, whether that was on purpose or they just lack the knowledge of how to do it properly. So in healthcare, it's been a big thing. So the Department of Justice has kind of wised up to, well, this is very effective. How else can we be applying it? And today, I mean, as recently as in the past week or so, I've seen at least 3 or 4 things come out about using the False Claims Act in other than healthcare.
Okay. So, healthcare, that has been a thing historically. Are there other areas where it's been used, or mainly that's where we've been seeing it?
I think it's mainly where we've been seeing it. So, for example, in 2021, they collected something on the order of 20 billion in fines and penalties and repayments in healthcare, and in the all other category, it was really in the low 3, maybe 3 billion. And it really does depend on the emphasis. That's something that has become very clear. Whatever they decide, and this again is Department of Justice, is something they will focus on together with other entities in the federal government. That's what they'll focus on. So where it came to be in cybersecurity stems from the Executive Order 14028 from May of 2021, which was about improving the nation's cybersecurity. And that executive order specifically asked the Department of Justice to come up with some way to better enforce the rules for cybersecurity in contracts. And they did. They came out with their cyber fraud initiative in October of that year. And we've really seen it escalate now. And somewhat it depends on what your contract situation is. In this use, it's really, you have to have a contract somewhere with the federal government.
Okay, so just to clarify then, this involves the federal government and federal contracts. This would not involve, state of Connecticut or Missouri or something like that, would it?
It could. The one we're talking about is from the Department of Justice's perspective, and they use the False Claims Act from 1860s. But many states have also put into place false claims acts of their own. So I know when I was working in healthcare, we definitely did Medicare and Medicaid fraud, because if people were doing Medicare fraud, they probably were also doing Medicaid fraud. And in some cases, they really only did Medicaid fraud. And those could be prosecuted sometimes with the Department of Justice, because that is partially funded by the federal government, but primarily the Medicaid cases were against or were done by the state governments. So yes, the state governments could be involved as well.
Wow. Okay. So at every level, then, so okay, if this billing, if this reporting, these need to be done correctly. If somebody comes across, an incident or multiple incidents of cutting corners, or somebody's not really serious about cybersecurity, what should someone do?
Well, that's a really good question. I think the most typical thing that you see in a False Claims Act, regardless of the industry we're talking about, is a whistleblower. And a whistleblower is that person who, for whatever reason, they're ethically feel bound, or they just don't like what they see, or, as is more typical, they've tried over and over again within their company to tell the powers that be that it's not being done correctly. So very frequently, it's someone who is working for the company. Like there's a recent thing about a whistleblower at Penn State University, Pennsylvania State University, and that's near and dear to my heart. A lot of my money went there for my children. But they have a false claims, and in that case, it's against the research portion of Penn State, where they were not cybersecurity secure. They made some decisions to cut costs, and they did, and they changed things. And the CIO is the one who told them over and over again, this is not right. And eventually they didn't do anything about it, so he was a whistleblower. And the whistleblower reports something to their local FBI or the local lawyers that will contact where they need to in the Department of Justice. But that is something that's very typical. But I really do encourage people, if you're the employer and somebody's coming to you and saying this isn't right, listen to that person and investigate what they're talking about, because you can prevent an awful lot of problem, an awful lot of money, but also the bad news that you come across that gets broadcast everywhere. Like, I'm sorry to bring up Penn State, but it's big, it was bad, and it's a great example of what not to do.
Right. Janet, I also think, importantly, these laws, these things are in place at the end of the day to protect our national security. I know at our firm, we have seen issues of, hey, this isn't in compliance, and there may be some pushback from the client. Oh, do I have to? What have you? I've also seen cases where somebody internally within a company, has turned to me and said, look, this is what's going on. This is in violation of this law, that law, not to mention the safety and well-being of people, right? What do I do? And here in New York City, we do have our own city has a Department of Investigations. Of course, there's the federal, and state levels. But for anyone watching who might be in a situation of, I'm not sure what to do, there are avenues, and certainly if you ever need to figure out what might be the right one, and you're not getting as far as you want to with your research, contacting Janet's office or even ours, would be a good place to start. Can you share, Janet, how is the FCA being used in the context of cybersecurity, or in the context of cybersecurity, to pursue wrongdoers?
So it ties together with earlier we spoke about the CMMC, or Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. That is something that the Department of Defense is madly trying to get in place. So it kind of comes together with that the Department of Justice is looking either with or without an insider, relator, whistleblower person. They're looking at all the contractors that have maintained that they are fully compliant with those controls. There's 110 controls in the CMMC level 2, and most companies are there. Most companies are at level 2, and for years, since 2017, as a matter of fact, many companies have just been entering into the supplier risk management system of the Department of Defense, fondly known as SPURS. I always picture someone with a cowboy with spurs, but they've been putting in there that they achieved perfection, or 110, and that's extremely hard to do. And now that the Department of Defense has caught on to this, they're doing assessments, they're doing audits. They can do a desk audit, they can do a formal come on to site kind of audit to look at your cybersecurity. And if you aren't up to snuff and you cheated the system, I think the worst one so far that's been reported is somebody reported they were perfect, which means you have a 110 score. And when they actually were reviewed by the Department of Defense's assessment organization, they were negative 230, which basically meant they had nothing. Oh. So what they do then is they can make a referral to the Department of Justice. If the Department of Defense feels that the people did that knowingly, willfully, they can go right to the Department of Justice, and they will look at the case and take it over from there.
Wow.
It's a big deal today. It wasn't in 2017. There was not much enforcement. I think it could be a case study of what happens when you don't enforce a rule or a law. But nowadays, don't take the chance.
Yeah, I would agree. I know oftentimes companies or organizations, they operate in this, well, no one said anything to me, so I must be doing everything right,
Exactly.
And you don't actually know if you're doing anything wrong if you haven't stopped to do your own internal audit to make sense. Am I, aren't I? And I know your company, 3Comply, you guys, you work with companies who work in highly regulated industries, going through doing these internal audits, looking at other software solutions or implementing plans. These are all things that your company could help with. Is that right?
Absolutely. And if you really do think there's a whistleblower inside your company, then go get your lawyer right away. So talk to Deanna, talk to her associates. But if you really do think that you've got a problem, make sure you're doing all those investigations under attorney-client privilege. That's my suggestion.
Nice, Janet. All right. Well, Janet, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Deanna. It was a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate the invitation.
You betcha. And for those of you watching, if you'd like to learn more about 3Comply, you can check them out at their website, www.3comply.com. You can also give them a call at their office. The telephone number is 401-252-1800, or send them an email, comply@3comply.com. Again, my name is Deanna Clark with the Clark-Esposito Law Firm. You can learn more about us at our webpage, Clark-Espositolaw.com. We have a contact form on the homepage. You can reach us through that method. You can also call our office, 917-546-6997, or you can send us an email at contact@clarkespositolaw.com. Thanks for tuning in.
Subscribe and click the bell icon so you'll be the first to know when we upload a new video. Check out our playlist if you want to see more of our videos, and comment below and introduce yourself. We'll see you soon.